Got it. So, good evening, everyone. We are now streaming live on both Facebook and Zoom. Good evening, Nadija. How are you?
Good evening. Very well. Thank you for having me, Daniela. Always a pleasure to be back.
Wonderful. It's so wonderful. And I know at the beginning, we are trying to make sure that all of our connection on different platforms are going live, and we are. Wonderful. So it's such a great honor to have you here. And as we wait for people to start logging in, and we're going to say hi to everyone in a moment, I just would like to start saying what a privilege to have met you. We haven't known each other for very long, but we've connected straight away.
Yeah,
for a number of reasons, and I've always been attracted by the type of work we do, because it is very important for people these days to do what is probably not really appropriately called shadow work, because it looks like kind of a scary type of work to do, to find out about ourselves and everything. But there is more to grief support and grief specialist that you do. Is it hypnotherapy as well?
Absolutely. Hypnotherapy and mind coaching, Reiki healing,
yeah,
as well as grief education and support, and the mediumship.
Amazing. How wonderful is that? So do you want to tell us a bit about your story, and how I know we've spoken in the past, but for the ones that haven't come across you yet, can you tell us a bit more what brought you on the path of grief?
Yes, absolutely. So the way it happened is, I know it's a strange one. I explain to people, it's not very often that you wake up in the morning and you think, I'm going to be a grief specialist. It doesn't really happen overnight. But I lost my dad when I was 9 years old, and from cancer. And at the time when you're 9, I thought you would get better and you would be fine. And I was sent on a school trip by my family, not to, basically they were protecting me so I wouldn't know. And then when I come back, I found out that he passed away. And that was, I think, the beginning of decades of which word am I going to use? Unresolved or even unhandled grief, really. Mm-hmm. Some people call it now therapeutically, on the therapeutic side of things, they call it complicated grief, but it was decades of not being able to grieve. And then my best friend at the time, when I was 16, she killed herself. She took her own life, really. I mean, it's a hard thing as well when you're 16, and that happened in front of me. She left a letter for her family and everything, and we went for a walk, and then she jumped off the cliffs, where we're going for a walk. Right. And after that, I lost somebody in a war as well. My family coming from former Yugoslavia, I lost somebody I was very close to in a war. And then in my mid-20s, I lost a man I was deeply in love with, our soulmate, shall I call him, from cancer. And then over the years, I lost a couple of very good friends to suicide as well. And so that's kind of a lot of, like, each one of us, we have, our fair share of grief in a different shape or forms, because in my case, grief comes with death of a person, but a lot of grief comes as well by the end of a career, the end of a sporting career, the end of a relationship, the end of a job, when you have been, as I said, 40 years in the same company, etc. But that's what brought me on that path. I realized that when I did my own healing and worked through my own healing and worked on, as we say in the grief, I would say, sector, the pain stays, but the suffering became optional. So I worked on my suffering and when I felt that I was strong enough to then, deal with other people's pain through the same topics, I would say, I then decided to really turn my pain into purpose, or my wounds into wisdom, as we say, and decided to train as a grief educator. Yeah.
You know, like, it's, you know, hard enough to go through one traumatic experience, but having a few, you know, of loved ones, family, friends. You know, I had a trauma of one of my best friends in secondary school. So we were about, I was 13, and we had quite of an in-depth chat because I wasn't happy at the time, you know, like teenagers. I was talking to her, and we were almost the last two people leaving the school that day because we stayed behind to chat. And anyways, what happened in the evening, she had an accident, and as she was walking home, she got run over by a white van. And,
sorry to hear that.
yeah, and so what happened was that I got a call from another friend of ours, and she said, do you know, Gaia had an accident? And I said, like, oh my God. And he said, like, we don't know how bad it is, but anyway, she's in a hospital where her father is a surgeon. So somehow we felt like, wow, you know, she's in the best place, you know, like they look after her. And actually, come the morning, and this is to interweave with mediumship and with spirit and passing over. During the night, I woke up seeing this big halo of light coming into my bedroom that was completely dark. And she was there as beautiful as an angel, saying to me, I've come to say goodbye. And I went like, oh my God, where are you going? You know, like I felt like it was just a dream sort of thing, you know, like, but it wasn't a dream. It was weird. You know, that's how I could interpret it. Anyway, because of that dream, I slept over in the morning. I didn't, I didn't wake up on time, basically. So my father took me to school. And when I got into the classroom, actually, everybody was crying. And that's where I had like this trauma, because I remembered very well her coming to see me at night. So, you know, so let me come back to you to say, like, when you go through something like that, you know, it's traumatic enough. But then if you, you know, have more than one and friends,
multiple losses,
then it becomes, you know, a huge challenge. And I actually do know someone, a friend of mine, that has had a similar experience to yours. And you know, I know her quite closely, and she has a zest for life that is incredible, because on the back of that, you kind of end up appreciating life more than ever, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really something I can say is that I realized very, very late that piece, because I was so traumatized by my father's passing, and then by, you know, other losses, because I haven't even processed the big one when I was young.
Yeah.
And then everything that was adding on to it wasn't even processed either. And that turned into anger. But me, it was huge anger issues for years. I was always a kind-hearted person, and no problem in saying it. But my anger was very bad, because the emotions could come up, and because I couldn't cry, it was totally, I didn't work on my grief at all. So
a curiosity, did you realize that the anger was due to those deaths?
No. And that's the thing, when people would tell me, God, there's something wrong, you know, I mean, you shouldn't be angry like that for silly things or for little things. And I remember one, and I said, I mean, I told that story to some people around me. I remember one day when I came back from the UK. I lived in Scotland for years, and I came back, and I think it was around 2009 or 10 in France for a while to see my family again, and I kind of settled again in France. And one evening I was at my sister's, my family and everything was fine, with a nice chat, a nice catch up. And at some stage something came over me, and I could feel the anger coming, and I just threw the table. like against the wall. And obviously I never heard anybody or anything like that, but I just threw the table. And that's where my sister turned and said, you have a problem here. You need to deal with dad's loss, and, you know, you need to start dealing with these things. And they could see that that was the problem, because I didn't even want to talk about my father. It was very difficult to talk about my father. And then obviously even about other people that I've lost. But it's no, I never realized until that moment. And then I had health issues, and after all that, I did seek hypnotherapy in that case. That's why I'm doing that, because it was really helpful for my anger and other limiting beliefs as well. But I never realized until, well, and I'm 41, so 2012 was 9 years ago, until really when I was 32.
Yes.
That my decades of anger and suppressed emotions. You know, and sometimes it's like when you're a child and you play with the ball in the pool or in, you know, in water, and you put the ball under water, and then at some stage you keep it down under the water, below water, and then at some stage it just comes back up, and the whole thing just bursts everywhere.
Absolutely.
So,
and as you look at the way you dealt with grief at the time, because I've known a few people that have been kind of almost in denial. And my understanding, from my humble point of view, not being a specialist counselor, was that the pain and the grief was too strong for them to accept that even they needed help.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan. I shouldn't say that, being a specialist, but I'm not a grief counselor. I'm a grief educator, which is quite, I would say, new to Europe. I was trained by David Kessler, who is the international grief specialist, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was herself the pioneers of palliative care in the United States. And we talk a lot about the stages of grief.
Right.
You go from anger to acceptance, sadness, you know, I mean, you have anger, then, I mean, you have denial, then you have anger, because it's denial first, then you have anger, then you have very often acceptance. Before or after, depends, you have depression, what we call the depressive state, and then you have, you know, again, bargaining. And in an ideal scenario on paper, you have the stages of grief, if you want. So denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. But to me, these stages can go in nearly any way. You know what I'm trying to say is, you can be in denial first, then you can be angry, or you can be angry straight away, and then deny and think, no, nothing happened, I'm just going to carry on. And then be what we call grief depression. You know, it's not real clinical depression, it is the effect of grief. So I'm not in how I work with people, I don't necessarily really think that there is
I apologize for, you know, calling, because as you say, educator, you know, as you mentioned, is a new thing. And to me, you know, people that do help others become automatically counselor. But actually, thank you for highlighting that these are completely two different things. Although
very complementary, because I'm a therapist at heart with my hypnosis anyway. But what I mean is, on the grief education, it's really using our insights, our experience, and educating people on grief, as well as walking the path with them, you know, walking along with them, on the path, and sharing, when relevant, our experiences. But it's really that side of educating you with, I am creating a safe space for you, for you to talk, for you to have your pain witnessed, you know, the needs of the griever, and to be able to even you know, work on old wounds, get acceptance, find meaning. All these we will work on these are the needs of the grieving. But first and foremost, we also use our insights and our educational side, and to sometimes challenge the griever as well, and to explain that what death is. That, for example, death is random. You know, when somebody comes and has lost somebody, obviously you can't say, well, death is random. You know, if somebody has just lost their son or their daughter or the mother, but it's the education piece comes in time, just teaching them about death and grief, so then they can use it for their own healing. Have some facts that challenge the way they feel.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually say hi to people that have joined us while you've been talking. So we've been having popping in Nigel, and then Honey Thorne. Hi, good evening. Thank you for your comments so far. Tim Abbott, good evening. Claudia Olsen. And Honey she's saying that she's very sorry to hear your story, Nadija, and she's never heard of anyone had multiple losses, but actually, as I was mentioning earlier on, it's something that happens actually more often than we know. And then Honey is saying, I would think that most people don't deal with their grief. They battle it up and hold on to it, and that's all good.
Yeah, and absolutely. And good evening, everybody. And I see your comments now. I should be even techier than that, but I just put your comments on my phone so I can see both screens.
Yeah.
And thank you for your nice comments. Thank you very much. And also want to reply just to Honey when she said it's also the loss of pets. So I am more than a pet lover. I mean, I brought my cat from France here on private transport because she's my baby girl. And absolutely. And I want to say about pets, any being, but as I said before, grief. I know as humans, straight away we think of who died. If we talk about I'm grieving, who died? It's not just the physical loss of a person close to us. It's the death of, as I said, it could be a divorce, it could be the end of a friendship. I mean, I met a lady in a local in the local community here when I was doing actually a talk on grief where she fell out. They were in a nursing home and she fell out with a best friend of 50 years. And they were in the 70s. So that was awful, because she said, who am I now without my best friend? Because I don't know, I feel empty. So grief there's a wider scope to grief. And my role as a grief educator as well is to help people with grief education pieces and handling the suffering. I'm going to come back to that, not the pain, because I genuinely believe that we never take the pain away, nor the grief, because the pain is linked to the person you've lost. So we tend to hold on to it, but the suffering is optional. And as a grief educator, I don't want to take your pain away. I don't want to take your loved one away from you. That's what links you to them. But I just want to help you ease the suffering. But on the education piece as well, what we do as grief educator is you can go to places, to companies, to nursing homes, to hospitals, etc., to really educate also the people who are working there to understand how to talk about death, dying, grief. And that grief is not just, who have you lost, who died? It's really to understand that. And I think I saw a nice post last week on a social media platform where they said, all these are grief types nobody talks about in society. The pet loss, you're absolutely right. End of a relationship, end of a friendship, end of a career. I also met a football player, and he injured his knee, and that was the end for him. And he was quite young, and it was the end. So that's grief. Or even when you have, I'm going to go a little bit even a bit further here. Let's say somebody had, I met a lady as well who was suffering from diabetes, and the leg was amputated. So now she's grieving her body. She's grieving who she was. Right. Because she's looking at her body, she can't really, wear the clothes she used to wear. So it's that's why I am also passionate about what I do. And I know a lot of people tell me, how can you be so bubbly and full of life when you work with death and the dying and trauma? Yeah. Because I'm a trauma specialist with my therapy. And because there is always, and that comes a bit later on that journey of grief, there is always a way to turn, to find meaning, to turn whatever happened to you. To
transmute that absolutely something meaningful. Margaret Birson is thank you and welcome for joining us. She's commenting, pain is inevitable, worrying is optional.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I tell people as well. I'm not helping them on the pain. And I keep repeating, the pain is yours. It's, I even say, I'm a bit provocative here, but grief is precious. And when I say grief is precious, why is it precious? Not because you suffer. It's precious because it links you to that person or that career, or that job, or that pet you lost. And when I say it's precious, it's important for you, and I hope that lands well. But it's important for people listening to understand that when I say grief is precious, is be mindful who you share your grief with, because not everybody is worthy of you sharing your grief with them.
Oh, wow.
And what I mean by that is, as a society, we're not equipped to deal with loss, with grief. What we want to do as humans is, we've all been through that. Even me in my younger years, you hear somebody losing someone close and you think, oh, I'm sorry. But with a bit of time, you're going to get better, or it's going to be fine. We just don't know how to handle pain. And especially in this modern society, all the rites and rituals, have kind of faded away, and everything has to be done quick. Look at how quick now people are even, being buried or cremated. Everything has to be done quick. So the pain, so it becomes invisible. And like, we give a couple of days off to somebody who has lost a child. And then after a week, you're supposed to be back on track.
Yeah, no.
So.
Because I suppose, say, for instance, someone suddenly has a trauma and starts the process of going through grief. And even when you seek for help and treatment, and can you ever, and this is my curiosity, can you ever overcome grief?
And again, I might be provocative, and maybe some of my peers might not agree, but I would say we kind of agree. I don't think we overcome grief. You live with grief. When we say you live fully, you grieve fully. So I think you grieve fully, you live fully, then you just learn to live with your grief. And that's why also the education part is becoming very important, is people understand some things afterwards around death, grief, dying. And that helps their suffering to ease. But I generally don't believe that you overcome grief. You live alongside your grief.
It's like when you have a long-term disease, I'm talking because I was diagnosed 20 over years ago with a disease that with an illness that they didn't think I would outlive the next 2-3 years. And I was grieving then, but then I discovered that actually doctors found out that it wasn't going to go down that well. Obviously, I'm here and I'm more than
good.
And it's like all good. But, the first 3-4 years I was grieving for myself. I was grieving because I was going to go. And it felt like having a death sentence, So, and then I found out from that experience, when I then realized a few years down the line that actually I was being blessed somehow. Then I still have the same illness. And if I don't take some of these life-saving tablets, I may as well just be going downwards very quickly. But what I'm saying is, like, how I learned, and I think I could humbly say that the way I dealt with the illness and saying, I need to live the life the best way I can, it's probably similar, if I may say, to the grief process, where you say, okay, this has happened and I can do something. For instance, do you think that going out and be of help to others can help yourself?
Absolutely. And that's why I said before, when I talked about turning your pain into purpose, when I was sick, because I got 3 brain surgeries between 2014 and 2015, one of them left me paralyzed. And then when I obviously, you have a big bump in your head and your hair is shaved, and when you have lush hair and you're young, and then you grieve who you are as well. And just to kind of talk about what you just said as well. Then and after that, anyway, my eyesight, I have a retinopathy as well, and then I can't drive in the dark, for example. So no problem during the day, but I can't see on the side. So pieces of me I still grieve them even on that, because if somebody tells me now, let's go out, well, I said, okay, I'll take the bus or you pick me up, because I can't drive. And I used to be a very good driver at night. So these very little things are grief. And how then my way of giving back to the community, to the world, to be of service, and also to me, to contribute to even more of my own healing, is to give back and to help. And again, I don't even like to say to help, because something we've been taught in our grief program, and I love that, really stuck with me, is if you start saying you help people, you know, it means that you're above them and they're a little bit below you and you're helping them. I really use being of service and walking alongside them.
Alongside the same path, yes.
Yeah. We're together. Nobody is helping, because also when you're grieving, whatever you're grieving, you're not broken. We don't need to fix you. I don't need to help somebody grieve. I need to create a safe space to listen to them, even if you don't want to talk, to just allow that space to be created, to acknowledge their pain. That's something important, acknowledge the pain. And that's what I didn't necessarily get, and that I want to create for other people. So yes, I genuinely feel that when I work with the people I work with now, on that grief side of my activity, is extremely rewarding. And I had a breakthrough with a client last week where she came for something totally different. And then at some stage we said, no, we talked and I helped. And then again, in that case, we kind of suggested a few things, and then we opened a subject around something happening in her life, and she was just grief stricken. And it's easy to create that space to allow people to be able to talk, to be witnessed. And I really believe that when you see how other people can work on their suffering and just manage their grief, it is very rewarding, and not in an egotistic way, but in just a very human way, to think, right, well, at least today, one more person will understand that grief is personal, grief is unique. It takes the time it takes. There's no timeline. And that's why I'm doing what I do, because people accept you now to right. Like we say in Ireland, you're grand, okay, now the funeral is gone, get on with your life. It's not that easy. It's not just the flick of a switch.
No,
you know?
Not. And when you kind of started realizing that you could hear spirit or see it, we'll dig into that side of things as well. How that helped you, if it did?
Tremendously. Now, when I realized I could connect to the spirit world, like a lot of people, I was very young, so as I grew up, I totally packed it, shelved it. And until after I didn't say it in this one, but after my surgeries, and when I wanted to change my life from being a sales director and the corporate life and all that, to finding meaning and my calling. Then spirit came to me and said, no, we're here to tell you it's part of your mission. You have, obviously, they're not pushing you, but you have the ability to help other people, to help yourself. And I always knew there was something. I always felt my father out, but I never wanted to go there because I wanted to be normal, not to be woo-woo. But when I got that, that just, first of all, was the most amazing thing that happened in my life when I embraced my mediumship. That's maybe the best way to say it. Because, yes, it doesn't take the pain away. The pain will never go. Sorry. It never takes the pain, because when you get married, you still want your father to be there. When you have whatever you have, a celebration, you want the people you love to be there, and they're not physically there, so you're missing the physical presence. Or you want your pet, you wake up in the morning, the cat, the dog, the rabbit is no longer on the bed with you, so you're missing that.
It's true.
When you know, and that's, I just want to, a side note here, because it's important to me as a business owner and in my therapy practice, as well as in my spiritual work. I never bring my belief in my in my therapy or grief work,
Yeah, yeah,
because this is totally separate, and I
of
want people
course, of
to
course,
get the best of my services. But it's very important
of
just
course.
for me to mention that. But
Yeah.
as a person, me as a medium, as a spiritualist, my mediumship has tremendously helped me with my own grief, because I know now that the people I love, I got messages, they hear, they speak to me, they give me, again, today I had one of my students in mediumship, and she brought me she was practicing and she brought me a nice messages. And again, just having that ability to
Mm.
know there is something after the physical death, there is a continuity of the conscious after
Yes.
the physical death. And now I
Yes.
follow a lot of, psychiatrists in France and abroad, scientific people who are now, they have no choice but saying, and it's out there. I'm not, coming with
Mm.
any news.
Yeah.
There is uh, there is the continuity of consciousness after the physical death.
Mm. Mm.
This is
Abs-
where mediumship has saved me around my grief anyway, tremendously. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like the reason why I do this podcasts as a school, but not because you attend as a student, but it's like a learning place where, I want the followers to understand that, mediumship, has much more to offer than just giving a message,
Absolutely.
to bring love, comfort, love, and support. There is so much more, to that. So, and in your experience, have you had any contact with any of the people that you knew that went, and perhaps telling you about their experience in the afterlife, perhaps? Or
No, their experience of their afterlife. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah, like, okay, they probably would have said, I'm fine, or maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Well, all the people, my close loved one I lost,
Yeah.
each one of these people, and even some pets, came to tell me they were not only fine, but that they were having a ball. They're
Ah,
enjoying themselves,
wow.
and I think again that's another. And I love. I just want to say, honey, I love everything you just wrote, and I just wanted to acknowledge this lovely lady because she has
Yes,
some
yes, yes.
lovely comments.
Really lovely.
But absolutely, it's each one of them genuinely came to tell me I'm fine, but not only I'm fine, I'm enjoying it now. I'm
Mm.
pain free, and just to know I'm pain free physically for those who have
Yeah,
been physically ill, but
yeah.
I'm also mentally. And today the message I got is through my student was from a dear friend of mine who took his own life this year,
Ah,
and that is just what he told me. And that was just an amazing message. And I'm going to
yeah,
share it with you because
yes,
I
yeah.
think it's important. And that's my student. She's amazing. Today she just gave me that. And he said, the work you do has helped me with my own grief of me doing what I did.
Wow,
And he said, you should never stop. So keep going, girl.
wow.
And that's for a moment, obviously I was very emotional and I still am like, made me really emotional, but it just shows you as well that they're still people, they're there, they're
Mm,
still living another life, and they also understand what they went through and they reflect. So he
absolutely.
didn't say, oh, I was absolutely fine when it happened and I
Yeah,
transitioned to the spirit world,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he explained today in his message that he went through different stages understanding what happened really, and
Mm-hmm.
that finally, I don't know, this came in the message
Yeah,
and I found it very
yeah.
beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
that he made peace with what happened to him.
Wow, that is amazing, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
I do know of, funnily enough, a friend from Yugoslavia who committed suicide after the war, in fact. And he appeared during one of my readings, and what his message was that he didn't believe in the afterlife, and he was very curious of the work that I was doing at the time with other people. And so he was very excited to know that there are people of the like of us, mediums, that are spreading, the messages from, the afterlife, because that is very important to show that, as you said, the conscious moves on. We are energy, and as energy, we are created, and energy cannot be destroyed either.
Absolutely.
So, and so in your practice, do you do courses? Obviously, I would imagine you do obviously one-to-one, but how can people benefit from what you offer?
So I do a lot of one-to-ones on so I'm a trauma hypnotherapist, so I do a lot of one-to-one with the hypnotherapy.
Okay.
I do a lot of one-to-one with the Reiki, then on the spiritual side, I do just like yourself, I teach as well. So I have my one-to-one students and also the group online.
Yeah.
And on the grief, the groups will start probably after the new year, but on the grief education and support, it's a one-to-one at the moment as well. Okay. This is where I had the most requests, but I am working on creating a group, what I call a closed group of between 6 and 8 people, minimum of 6, maximum of 8. So it's quite intimate. And
would that be online or in person?
Yes, that would be online to start with. Yeah, okay. Because I want, again, I know a lot of people now, we all love being in person, but I feel as well offering an online option here connects other people from other culture with different types of grief, and they come together and they grow together.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask you a question? Because I know of someone that was expressing publicly about the grief and their personal grief about losing a family member. And apparently this person was saying to me when I, contacted her to say, look, if you're looking for support, there are so many avenues. And if you need any, help, I know people that I can put you in touch with. And she said, well, a lot of people, like groups she wanted to join, were... how can I say, they were coming from, they were suffering with grief of death that had been announced, such as illness. But when it comes to suicide, it's a different story. Can you explain to me how people perceive grief differently according to the way the loved ones go?
And I understand where this lady is coming from. Now, there's again different types of grief. We won't have enough time to go to the different types of grief. I'm not talking about the stages.
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier on, didn't you?
Yeah, but that was the stages before.
Oh, that's the stage.
We also have different types of grief. Okay. And for example, if you take, somebody who was told you have stage 4 cancer, or you have cancer. And so they have been told that they are sick and that they will most probably pass, die. And in this case, I'm just going to take that scenario and I'll explain. The person themselves starts to grieve. They like to grieve themselves because now with different ways, they can be very happy, they can be very open, they can enjoy all the days they have left, or they can just totally shut down and think it's already the end. Everybody will be different. But the people around those people, so let's say I'm talking about a gentleman here who has a family. So his wife is going to hospital with him. She's around him. He has children. So the people, his loved one around him, will, again, everybody's different, but we'll talk about anticipatory grief. So they will they'll know dad or the husband is going to transition to pass, and they're already starting to grieve him. So the grief process already started. Or, you know, even when you put somebody who has Alzheimer or dementia or a nursing home, and they're gone, they're going. So you kind of grieve because you've lost the person you used to know, even though they're not physically gone yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's the anticipatory grief. Yeah, there's a lot of different types, but in this case, I think this is quite applicable. Then you have, let's say somebody, you know, dies to suicide. Well, obviously, the same lady with the kids is totally, again, shocked as well, because unexpected, tragic, traumatic. So, of course, if you put, you know, people, sometimes it works. Again, everybody's different. We humans are amazing at that. There are different stages of the grief, maybe. But the fact is that, I'm going to say, it doesn't lessen the pain, or it doesn't lessen the suffering. Even if you know that you're going to lose your father, your mother, when that happens, you're still going to be very much in pain and very much grieving. But I understand where this lady is coming from, because what we say, again, clinically, and I'm not a by the book person, but let's say what the way it is spoken is that when you anticipate, you kind of get ready. But how can we get ready to lose somebody we love? But that's probably what she meant, that they had time to come to terms, even though I don't like it, because I don't believe we come to terms, but they had a little bit more time to understand that, right, we are losing this person. So I need to get used to the fact that I'm losing them. And she didn't have that.
Right, yes. So in that sense, then maybe you would advise a person that loses a loved one by suicide to actually join a specific group then.
Yeah, and again here, I know not everybody agrees, but I tend to, with the group I'm working on, is for traumatic passings. Because that's what I feel the most drawn to. So traumatic passings. And when I work on creating my groups, the way I work is I have a chat with people, like a quick discovery call, to make sure they're a good fit for the dynamic of the group. For them and for the group, because you don't want them to come and be disappointed, and you don't want the group to be disrupted either.
That's true.
So my genuinely, now again, remember, the main thing is to get help. So when we're grieving and we feel we need help, the main thing is to get help. So to get somebody who can really help us on that path. But I would definitely agree that it is often, again, I have to be very moderate when we talk about human emotions. It's often better if you can speak to people who can relate to your pain. This is why we have, you know, a lot of grief groups who like deal with the loss of a child, the loss of a sibling, or the loss of a parent, you know, grandparents, and groups with traumatic passings. And sometimes it's even narrowed down. You have groups on people who have lost people to murder, and other people have lost people to suicide. You know, and sometimes it's even like narrower. Because these people will go and they'll feel, well, at least he knows, she knows what it feels like to lose somebody unexpectedly. But I still say that if there is a chance when somebody is feeling a lot of suffering, is at least to integrate a platform, a group, or to seek help, not to stay. I know not everybody wants to hear it when we're in grief, but the most important thing, and that's the first two needs of the griever, of a grieving person, is to express your feeling and to have your pain witnessed. So at least in a group or with a therapist or with a specialist, or they can have those two
needs met. Wow, that is so interesting, honestly. And I'm so glad that this recording will go on to Facebook, because a lot of people will be able to catch up, you know, afterwards. And I don't think the topic sometimes can, it's a very delicate topic, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. And but it's actually fascinating. I'm also training, I think I told you, and I'm also training as an end-of-life doula.
Correct, yeah.
And to help the dying as well as now the relatives. And that, by the way, came from spirits. I heard it in June. Spirit said, now you have to do that. I had no clue where that came from.
Yeah, right.
And they even found a school for me when the school is next to where my mother lives. Yes. Believe it or not. Wow. So if that's not a synchronicity, there is only one training organization in France where I come from.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that training in French because I did all my other trainings in English.
Yeah.
But there's only one accredited school, and that school is next to where my family comes from. So what I mean is how, just to tie it back to also mediumship and spirit.
Yeah.
That's my belief, my personal belief as a person, that everything is orchestrated behind the scene for us to find our path, to do what we're supposed to do. Absolutely. And that's the beauty of mediumship as well.
And we are being blessed by spirit because as they keep connecting to us, they help us be on our path. And we don't know everything, but we know, and we are being told, as we go along, how to expand our role in spirituality. So are you planning to do any maybe workshop or anything?
I'm actually working on it. Thank you for asking. No pressure now. No. I'm actually doing because I run a lot of presentation here in person in Dublin. Forgot that those who just maybe join us. I am French. My parents come from former Yugoslavia. I lived in Scotland, in Russia, and now I'm living in Dublin. So just to confuse everybody. Confuse everybody. So I live in Dublin at the moment. I've been living here for the past 6 years, and I've started doing quite a lot of in-person presentations to different, institutions. But I have been asked a lot. So the way I run it here, I'm going to actually run a free, what I want to call it, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, like an hour and a half masterclass Zoom call to go through the needs of the griever, how to speak to somebody in grief, because that's what I start with, is help with that side of things. What do we say to somebody grieving? And to talk about a grief relationship toolbox. So what words to use, what question to ask. So that these are kind of tips and tricks everybody in their life can use to help other people. And I will be announcing those on my social media.
Well, let us know when you do, because I will try and spread the voice for you as well.
Absolutely, thank you.
Possible, because I think this is absolutely vital. And I believe I've heard that this is the month for a suicide month, I think.
I know it's a mental, obviously yesterday was a World Mental Health Day yesterday.
Okay.
And here again, and it's very interesting how all these things, we come together, because we had World Mental Health Day yesterday. We also now are approaching different, in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, winter times, where some people might suffer from the SAD syndrome.
Yes.
Also, that period of the year with Christmas, I love Christmas, I love it, but remembering as well, and that's just a little bit of my own word here. Remember to check in on the people around you. Remember just to check in on people, because it's that period of the year where, as happy as it can sound, a lot of people, the nights are short, like the days are short, the nights are longer, it's colder, it's darker, it's wet, and people tend then, I wouldn't say grief comes back even more during those times, but obviously when in the Caribbean and it's very sunny, you just have a different way of, I don't even know why I keep saying Caribbean in all my chats. I've never been to the Caribbean. I don't know where that is coming from. Maybe Spirit is trying to tell me to go to the Caribbean.
Something.
But you probably feel slightly different, in your day-to-day life than when it gets really, darker and it's a bit gloom outside and it's foggy. And not that it doesn't affect your grief as such, but what I mean is, because we're also on that World Mental Health Day, there's also tend to be more suicide and, you know, darker nights and, you know, the winter times. So just check in on each other. And I think Honey said that as well. Again, she said, you know, we all need each other. And I agree. It's I keep saying it's co-creation. We can't stop when people haven't, you know, that's another topic, you know, the guilt around suicide and all that, because we think we should have done something and we could have done, you know, what if. But just being present with people, and that's what my masterclass will be about, on my workshop online. It'll be kind of a half 2 hours to really talk about how you can just help somebody who's lost someone, what you can tell them, what is grief, what are the needs of the griever, and before even going there, check in on each other. If you know somebody is struggling, just check in and just tell them, you know, believe me, I see it in my work. Just being with somebody and telling them, talk to me about who you love. Talk to me. What
just
was she
makes
like?
a difference.
What was she like? I worked with a gentleman who had a terrible loss a couple of months ago, and just the first session was, talk to me about her. What was she like?
Wow.
What did she
Amazing.
do? And
you
then
know, I really would love to attend your masterclass, just because I think that it's raising one's own awareness, particularly when we come to an age when, you know, family is getting older and all of that, you know, and you will expect that. And you know, it would be fantastic. And you explain everything ever so clearly that I know that
thank you.
that everyone will really, really enjoy, you know, your masterclass, and certainly, you know, get a good, you know, support, be in your hands, be cared and safe in your hands, and creating a comfort.
And I'm going to do a few of those. I'm going to do kind of a series, but I'm just that's kind of my starting point to talk about the need of the grieving and how to speak to somebody. But as we go along, I'm going to do probably that either before the end of the year or the new year. And then there's going to be a series, like a quarterly webinar around another topic. And because again, it's that education piece.
Absolutely, you know, absolutely. And look, I am totally aware that you are a busy lady.
Thank
you. You are booked.
So as you, by the way, so are you. So are you.
I am, yes.
I know that.
Very much. And so I just wanted to say thank you very, very much for giving your time to come along and talk about this very sensitive and yet super important topic of, you know, trauma and grief, and trying and find a method that works for, you know, healing, to try and heal as much as possible, or learning to cope, as we said, with grievance. I just wanted to remind instead everybody that is following us that next week we will have a trans medium Phil Shaw, and he is one of the representatives of the Wimbledon Spiritualist Church in London. I'm very much looking forward to having him here to discuss about conscious evolution and working with spirit. And he was also a teacher at the College of Psychic Studies in South Kensington in London. He's a marvelous teacher.
Amazing, yeah, you'll be in very good hands. An amazing gentleman, absolutely
amazing gentleman indeed. Yes. So what can I say, Nadija? Thank you ever so much. It's such a pleasure to have had you here along.
Thank you for having me. You know, and thank you to everybody who commented, who joined, and I know there's Victoria there. And Honey Thorn, Annie, thank you so much, because every comment you made was absolutely amazing. And thank you, Victoria, as well. And as I said, if anybody wants to catch up, has any question, feel free to reach out, because my goal is really to raise awareness first and foremost. And I'm on a mission. I have to be honest. I'm on a mission to raise awareness. And that's why now I'm working with the dying as well. But it's to, you know, we're too isolated when it comes to dying and death. It's because we don't want to see it. We're not equipped. And everybody deserves the dying as well as the grieving to have their needs met.
Absolutely so. Again, thank you, and sending you my deepest gratitude, all of my love. And I'm sure that we will be talking soon on the side.
Oh, yes.
And I'll see you soon, hopefully in the new year.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody, again. Thanks, Daniela, and God bless everybody as well. And feel free, if you have any question, genuinely, you can put my first name, my surname, and put double in next to it. And there's only one. You're going to find me. You can't miss me. Take care, everybody.
I've added your link onto the page advertising, so hopefully one way or the other, they will find you, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. You take care.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.